How many times have you said, I don't know what's supposed to be in my associate program. I'm confused, I'm overwhelmed, and guess what? I'm not getting staff up to speed the way I want them to. On today's podcast, we're going to give you the secret sauce for building the perfect associate program for your salon. Salon owners are some of the most amazing people on planet Earth. The only problem is sometimes their hearts are so big and they give so much of themselves to their staff and guests that it creates unintended consequences. Our goal is to change the industry by elevating the way the rest of the world sees salons, spas, and barbershops and give it the credibility that it truly deserves. This is the Salon Owner Revo Show. So on today's show, Doug, we've got an amazing guest, a friend, a legend, a regular on the show. We're going to bring him on in just a second. But Doug, how often does the associate program come up inside the salon?
All the time. I mean, it's the launching pad for your business, really. When you bring people in, people have done it a million different ways, some good, some bad. So I think we're going to get through today. What's the good? What's the bad? I think that's.
So speaking of some good and some bad, I don't know anything bad about this man. All I know is a lot of good. What I would say is this man, when I first hung out with him, had a blast. And I was like, this dude's a good dude. We should hang out more. And then realized how amazingly epic he had as far as like his business background, his salon background. His wisdom and knowledge about the industry is just unmatched. And I just want to welcome to the show a friend, partner, client, everything else you could possibly imagine, Mr. Chris Fergan-Barron. What's up, Chris? How are you?
Hey, how are you guys doing? First of all, we've been talking about friends. We've been, as you say, partners. You've been a mentor, a coach to us for years, helped to turn our business from a mom and pop organization into a real business. I'm sure the same as you and Doug have done for all of the salons out there. But just to show you some of my gratitude that we got going on here, and we wear that around the house really well. And I just hope for all the people listening in today.
Wears that around the house?
Yeah, well, yeah, we'll just leave that all alone. Yeah, listen, whatever I can share. I love that introduction that I wrote, and I just want to say this is what I want to talk to you about with this today is because I've screwed up on it so many times, and this has been 50 years of research because that's how long 50 plus that I've been in the business. Was over 50 years as a salon owner. Well, I shouldn't say that. 50 years ago, I started as a salon owner and then moved into kind of the rank where I am now. So I've done it right and I've done it wrong and I've learned corrections to do. And this is why part of what we're doing right now is to really get this cooking for salons across the country and hopefully across the world.
Yeah, and I just want to say, I mean, if you know who Chris Barron is, say love Chris in the chat. If it's your first time hanging out with Chris, say first time. And, Chris is the Artistic Director of Education. I believe that's the official title through Redken. Correct, Chris?
Yeah, Global Artistic Director. That's correct.
Global Artistic. Don't leave the global out, Jason. For crying out loud. Global Artistic Director of Education. And, Chris is an amazing man. He does some of the coolest avant-garde style hair, multiple nominations for NAHA and won all kinds of stuff all over the place. And I know Chris is not a big bragger by any means, but I'm going to brag on you and just say that, he's an incredible human being. Google him, look him up, and see his hair cred. It is strong, but more importantly, and Chris, when I talk to people, they always ask me, they're like, is Chris really as humble as he appears? And I'm like, more. He's more humble than he appears. I don't know what to tell you because, for a track record like you, 50 plus years in the industry and all these amazing accolades, and like you're the most down to earth dude that just hang out and have a glass of wine and barbecue in your backyard. It's all the same. I feel like people just, I think that's what people always admire about you when I hear about you, and I admire the same. So I'm just glad to have you on because I think you bring some amazing perspective to the show today, and glad to have you.
Oh, God bless. Thank you. I really appreciate that. It's nothing like coming home from and awards, and then having your wife to take out the cat litter that brings you back to humility. So,
right? Isn't that the truth? I was like, I know we've gone out and done some of those red carpet events, and it's just like reality check instantaneously, right?
Yeah.
So, dude, let's talk about this, because I know this is kind of like the reason why I said secret sauce is you guys have been kind of brewing this behind the scenes, this idea of associate programs and helping people understand what makes up a good associate program, a bad associate program. But let's talk about a goal just for a second here. Doug, inside of a salon, what is the goal of having a strong associate program? Like, why not just hire a bunch of people who are already trained, already up to speed, they're good to go? Why waste the time training, quote, an associate? Why would a salon want to do that?
Well, you start to create the people that you want. I mean, some of the problem with hiring people that have been in the industry for a long time, that can come with their own baggage, things they've learned wrong or learned differently than from the way you do it inside your salon.
Yeah.
The associate program really gets people oriented in how you do it and gets them up to speed in how you do it. And I think it's the launching pad. And so if we hire somebody that has experience, they still have to go through a version of the associate program there again. So we know what they know how we do things, they know what the expectations are. I think a lot of that really sets things up clear. That's the biggest thing is you have clear agreements on what's expected of them and what they're going to get and how things function instead of figuring it out as you go. Because if you don't have one, then people are just kind of, oh, I didn't know, or this way I do it, this way I was taught in school, or whatever.
My last salon, that's what they always did.
Yeah, and then schools, schools are different. Different ones have different strengths and different weaknesses. And I think a good associate program is a common denominator, bring people into your environment. And I also think cookie cutter ones aren't necessarily the best thing either. I think you've got to have something that you can customize to your environment, because there again, all salons are different. You need to have one that's customized for what you're doing and what's going to fit your objectives, instead of trying to fit your objectives into something else.
Totally. So Chris, what would you say are the biggest mistakes? I mean, you've been into, I don't even want to guess the number, thousands or hundreds of thousands of salons, and you've worked with hundreds of thousands of salon owners. What are the biggest mistakes you see as people are building out associate programs? What are the top few mistakes that people make when building associate programs?
Well, I'll give you number one. Well, first of all, it takes a little bit of a lead in, and I'm going to tell you because this is what I did.
Yeah.
Usually what happens when I first started it, I went, look whose shingle is on the outside of the building, and it's Chris's beauty salon.
Yeah.
And therefore, Chris should be the highlight, and Chris should be the one that's teaching, and so on.
Right.
The first mistake that I made, because it ended up that it becomes a more a part of an ego and about look what I know, and passing that on as what's the best thing for the team. And that's the biggest part, is to remember you got to create a team. And so insofar as mistakes, please understand, if you are a salon owner and you're doing the training right now, I'm not saying stop. I'm not saying get out. I'm saying you're taking the path that I took, which seemed like the only one, because I was the one with the most knowledge.
Yeah.
So what I will tell you that the recovery or the cure for that is to pick somebody that ideally, number one, is is going to stay with you stay with you. It doesn't, if they're going to leave, that's okay. Better to be having somebody trained that leaves than somebody that you didn't and stays. Totally. So I would say, how are you going to start off teaching? How are you going to put a system together? Because that's usually what most people forget, is that it's got to be a system, not what do I think that I want to train this week. And that's quite frankly, it's the way we start.
I want to make sure I caught that, because that was a big point. How do you put a system together instead of what do I want to train on this week?
Yeah, and that's the biggest one of first off. Yeah. And I want to give you, I'm going to start on a little bit of a rule that I think, if you can just write down the word PACK, P-A-C-K, pack. Yep. It's like you want to pack that's your team. What is your team together? And I'm going to go, pack is what I think about when you're creating a system, let me rephrase that. When you're creating an associate program, a new hire program, a training system, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And the first thing is what you just said, is what's the program? And the biggest thing is I don't care if you're analog, get out your kitty calendar, you're one of the firemen, whatever it is, and figure out what you have. You got the fireman. Yeah, calendar. Personally, I have the kitty one. But get out that and start to just plan. Like, number one, what is the system that you have for? Are you going to do? Is it Wednesdays? Is it Wednesday morning? Is it Monday? Is it after hours? Is it before? It's got to be consistent. So let me give you kind of the acronym first, and we can just got to go back and forth because PAC isn't necessarily built in a specific order. PAC is number one, A is number two. This kind of all combined. So if you think of P stands for your program. What's your program? What's the system? What's the calendar that you're going to use? And now here's the one that that is probably not the hardest one, but the most effective one. A stands for accountability. What's the accountability factor that you have put into it? Meaning, when I say test outs, I don't mean that you have to have elaborate quizzes, although that's something we're working on. I'm just saying that if you're going to train somebody, what is the level of accountability that you have to them and that they have to you? And then the C stands for culture, because if you start to put that together, and that's what I love that Doug was talking about, some are right, some are wrong. But if you have the right one in place, that's what ingrains the training into your people, what keeps them loyal, because you have a culture that you're starting to build within. Nice. And your culture is not only just the way you high five or the way you greet one another. It's also culture is, if you look at cultures, mean you have a common language. Mm-hmm. What's the language we're doing? I can't say that I'm over directing and you're pushing and I'm pulling, and if we've got to communicate with one another, you have to have a language, and that has to be ingrained into the whole team. Yeah. And then the K is for keep it consistent. Now if you want to have PACC and C is consistent, I just thought the word PAC sounds a little bit better.
Good. Keep it consistent.
Those are the three things. You have to have a system. You have to be holding people accountable. If you're doing all of that, that's what creates the culture. It's not going to happen immediately. It'll build over time, and you have to be consistent in what it's done.
Yeah, I got it. So again, PAC, do me a favor, somebody type in the word PAC, P-A-C-K, type that in the chat just so that we have it saved in there. Because I think, Chris, that is really solid. Like, figure out the program. How do you hold accountable to it? How do you make sure there's a culture and the common language you use inside the salon? And then how do you keep it consistent? Because to your point, it's like, it can't be like a wake up today and what do I want to train on and like, let's figure it out, because it's not really an associate program. In your mind, Chris, if you're talking about, and by the way, one of your other, small projects that you work on the side is this other little thing that has, dozens of schools all over the country, is T-Spa, right? You're one of the members of, T-Spot and ESI, right? That whole school group, is you guys work with dozens of salon schools cosmetology schools and beauty schools all over the country. So you've helped create some of the curriculum for them to develop new students and create these inside salons. How long do you think inside a salon, once they graduate beauty school and then they come to a salon, what's a good time frame for somebody to go through a quote associate program, whether they're straight out of beauty school or they've been around for a while? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, that's a good question, and the answer is to that I would always put is like, how long is a piece of string? There's really no right or wrong answer. But what I will tell you here's what I have learned. And I loved what Doug said about you've got to customize. It can't be one set for one school, for one salon. Because here, let's face it, and be really, really frank and forward. Is that okay if I just call it what it is?
Let's do it, buddy.
What you're trying to do is you've got to get somebody from either another salon, a school, a new hire, and you want to get them on the floor as fast as you can, creating revenue. That's the goal. You can't. I mean, in an ideal world, you could say, listen, I'm amazing at what I do. You're going to go through a 3 or 4 year program of sweeping floors. And I think I saw Mr. Chris Moody. I think I saw his name come up on there before. And I will tell you guys that he is absolutely amazing individual, and he is also one of probably the finest trainers of trainers and one of the finest haircutters I know. Now, but to the point is that in the UK, and the reason why I'm bringing him up is that in the UK, they say you have to go through an apprenticeship, and it's this long. And whether that's right, wrong, or indifferent, it's different here. Most people get people out of school. They just throw them to the wolves, hope they come through, and then are finally guessing and wondering why they're not getting clients. So, here's what I would do. I would put a minimum and a maximum depending on the salon.
Yeah.
But I would say that the minimum that you want to have before you have somebody doing something that's creating or a part of the earning network in your business is 6 weeks. Between the time that they walk in the door to a minimum of when they're doing something on the floor should be approximately 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Now let me qualify what that means. And again, this is not only my opinion. I've done research with in creating this. We're right in the middle of creating this associate program that we're hoping to launch by hopefully mid 2021. But in research and talking to a lot of people outside your network, inside your network, that they want to get people on the floor to be able to do a blow dry that meets their standards. 2, can apply color, can do a color application, be it global and a retouch, and that's what you generally have to do to start with, is to get them onto the floor earning money. If it's not on their own, assisting somebody else who can generate dollars, taking over a service. Yeah. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah, totally. So it says minimum should be 6 weeks. Indoctrinate them into the culture, create the accountability, have some consistency, do all those things. And like you said, this varies country by country. Like some countries have a totally different methodology of how they operate. You said kind of that was the minimum is about 6 weeks. Do you have a maximum in your mind?
Well, here's what I would say is, to me, I know one salon in particular out of the New York or the Pennsylvania area that we have, like with Fuel for Design, is a program that we have designed for getting people from step 1 to understanding what they're doing as opposed to just memorizing and training.
Right.
And pardon me if I'm doing this at the same time. That was my phone that was going off, so I'm trying to put it on to my silent mode here, etc. So forgive me for that. Man. But what this particular salon does is they have them, the training program that we have is they have to go through that 6 times from start to finish, working through their mannequins or on clients, and once they get that, then and only then are they allowed to go onto the floor and start in hair cutting.
Chris, you mentioned something that I think I want to circle back to for a second. Is you mentioned a little bit earlier, this is way earlier in the interview, but you mentioned something about test outs. And now you're talking about they got to go through it 6 times. Yeah. I think that there are salons, because I know inside of Redken and the L'Oreal world, this is pretty prevalent, but I think outside of that, it's not. So I think it's important because we talk to everybody, right? Yep. Is that there's a difference between knowing something and being able to do it, right? Yeah. Or memorizing something. So why is that an important part of the associate program? Because I think, there's going to be a lot of people. Like if I was, I didn't go through cosmetology school, right? But if I went to cosmetology school for the amount of months and hours and did all the things that I had to do to go through cosmetology school, and then I go to a salon, they're like, great, here's your training program now that you're finished with school for another training program. I'd be like, what the hell? I thought I just went, I'm just, I know the industry, but I'm just saying, like, in general, it seems like it's a little bit random. What is the importance of the test out part of it to verify the knowledge, to do all that? Like, why is that such an important component to make sure it's installed and the language is right in your mind?
Okay, good. Well, that's, first of all, great point. And I would do two things. Number one, confidence. You're confident in the person that you have working for you. Yeah. They're confident, and you're confident their knowledge is. It brings confidence to the customers, because imagine that you can say, Doug has tested out in our design category, and now he's moved from design 1 to design 2. Now I'm not telling about those are the labels you should have. Please don't get me wrong. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but that's just
moving up. But here's the point that I want to bring out right now is that I'm sure that right now, and I already mentioned one master on there. It's Chris Moody. That if he's still on here, he's a master at hair cutting. Now, mastery is whether you believe in the 10,000 hour rule or not. It's if you equated it to a language, Somebody could say, if I wanted to learn English, and I believe, if I remember correctly, that something like it's either 162,000 words. If you're a master at the English language, you'd have to know 160,000 of those words.
Good Lord.
But you don't have to know. I do not know, as you can listen when I talk and when I write and see when the things that I do not know that many words. But I'm going to pick them. Let's say I know 60,000. I'm fluent in the language. Is this making sense so far?
Yeah, totally.
So when we're talking about testing out, you're trying to find out where in this process of training is the person. So you're getting to a point of being fluent in that skill, pushing them towards mastery.
I like it.
And
So it's
and I would suggest this. First of all, I used to, when we had our salons, everybody had to do, we had specific shapes, specific cuts we had to do, and you had to do them perfectly 10 times in a row. If you didn't, you weren't allowed to cut. Now, that's not the way to do it. That's the way I did it at the beginning. However, at that point, we did build a hell of a strong haircutting team, but it hindered your bottom line because they weren't getting on the floor earning money. So you've got to find that point of where is it?
It was a perfectionist game instead of an installation game.
It's exactly. Right? Well, it was an ego game. Look at how great we are. Look at how great our salon is. And it hurt our bottom line. So I'm telling people that now is you want to get to the point where they understand what they're doing. They can do certain things, but then you're pushing them further and further all the time. But number one is teaching. Number two is testing. Where are they at? You have to have the confidence before you're going to put them on the floor. I mean, doctors have to do it. They've got to, before I have somebody opening me up, I want to see that certificate on the wall.
Right. Right. And I think that's it. I think you said something that, I asked the question about, like, why would a salon owner want to do this? It really is about the safety of the guest. It really is about the security of, like, look, I know a million salons that get blown up for a bad haircut or a bad color and, or like have an inconsistent concept. Like, look, to your point, if your name is on the building, you're at risk for anybody who your staff touches, right? Like, meaning for their cut, for their color, for their safety, for everything else. And so you're securing your safety of the guest, of your future guests, by putting in a quality associate program, making sure they consistently meet the standards that you've set for yourself. And Chris, you said it really well, which is, don't make this about you and your ego. Make it about the quality that gets put out, not just that component of, like, my name's attached to it, right?
Well, you know what, and you bring up such a great point there, because, and I'm going to tell you my foibles, because here's where I was at. I thought it was about me. It was about me, but it's not. It's about it. Listen, if you're still thinking that it's about you, then you just bought yourself a job. But if you're an entrepreneur, then you have to think about your business as a whole. That's why the more that you're at this as the owner or somebody who is, listen, if you're great at doing hair and people come to do your hair and you hate educating, pick somebody else to do the educating, but make sure they're the right one. You can generate revenue. So let me tell you the mistakes that I've made in the past on this. When I worked in a salon, God bless, who I learned lots of stuff from. Still great friends with the people that own the salon. Forever grateful for everything I learned from them. But, I wasn't getting necessarily the training I wanted. They would help and give me some money to go out and train elsewhere and come back. And I got that maybe once every 2 years. But I was the kind of person that I wanted input. I wanted to become who I became, but I wasn't getting it. So I figured, look, here's the skinny. I'm going to start my own business, and I'm going to make sure everybody else is getting lots of training. I knew nothing about business, and then I went into business, and I went, holy crap, I got all these bills to pay. I got to start working, so I'm going to work more hours because I'm charging the most. I'm going to work more hours, longer hours, and guess what? What happened is the training no training. And then all of a sudden, I was caught in the same cycle as everybody else would. I have a turnover of staff because, they came to me because of, they said, I'm going to get training from Chris. If I didn't provide it, they would go away. I lost staff.
Right, because they came to work for you because they wanted training. You were stuck behind the chair because, again, you the highest earner, things like that. And so really, I think at the end of the day, having a strong associate program takes that focus off of you. And again, the associate program is not about you doing the training or about you being the celebrity there. It really is about turning them into those amazing people who can be on the floor so you can be running the business instead of having to be running instead of having to be behind the chair. Yeah.
And think about it. Think about the loyalty that you bring within your organization when the three of us have a salon, and let's say Doug's the owner, and he says, Jason, you're amazing at what you do. I want you to become my, pick a name, artistic director, education manager, whatever that might be, lead educator, whatever that would be. And between the two of us, we're going to figure out a system here, and we're going to put this together so that we can build more of you. And that's our sole goal, is we can have more of you on the floor with your capabilities and with your skill set. And then we're going to evolve. And that's the big thing that you need to keep doing, is just keep evolving the people, evolving your program, making it better. It's the same thing as when we debrief. What's working, what's not working, and keep changing, keep evolving.
Chris, one of the things I think you said, I think it's really important, is how do I get people up to the quality and onto the floor generating income for them and me as soon as possible? I think if you figured that part out, how do I get the quality where it needs to be as quick as it needs to be so that they can start making money and this business can start making money? I think that's super important, that people get lost on what, because either they get them out too soon without the quality, or they take way too long and it costs way too much money for the
or they leave.
They leave.
Or they leave to get it somewhere else. So here's what I would say is, don't make the mistakes that I made, where I figured if I had, let's just say you got, and particularly when we started off, it was design, color, finish, perms, retail, and your business acumen. And we thought they had to be there in all of them before they got on the floor. Wrong, bad mistake. Okay, is take a look at it and put your priorities. What's the first thing that you're going to get them to do? Just type it in. Somebody type it in. What's the first thing that you want somebody to do? The most simple thing that we do in the salon, I'll give you a hint, starts at the back bar, starts with a sh and ends with ampoo. Is just, you've got to get them up to what is the quality of service that you want when that client sits at the shampoo basin? How do you want them to shampoo it? What's the type of shampoo? What's the order of it? Once they can meet that criteria, now you've got somebody that can shampoo for somebody else, so somebody else can make more revenue. And then the next thing. So that'd be number one. Number two would be, how can I test somebody else so that I am fully confident that when somebody applies a retouch, that they're not going to get overlap, they're not going to get hot roots, all of those things, even if you're mixing the formula. So get them shampoo number one, and then what can they do for doing just a simple retouch to free up somebody else? So you figure them out: shampoo, retouch, a global application, and then, or if you feel that blow dries first, figure that in. Test them out on each one of those, get them on the floor doing that so they become a part of the team quicker and feel that their worth is in there. And then go on to the other things, like, get them to do those two simple things first before you say that you have to be able to do a balayage perfectly.
Totally. And by the way, it totally does, Chris. And by the way, we're going to have you on inside the actual academy and take you through a whole training on this, because I think you could do it. By the way, if you guys want more with Chris, do me a favor and type in more with Chris. Chris, clearly we could talk with you for another hour. But thank you so much for being on the podcast today. Guys, this topic, we could go on for hours and hours and hours. I think the best thing we can do is make sure you get more resources. Do me a favor, if you got some value out of this, do me a favor and say thank you to Chris inside the chat. Chris, brother man, thanks for being on the podcast. Doug, thank you so much for being on today. Hope you guys have an incredible week. And Chris, mega, mega valuable. Thank you so much, sir. We'll leave you guys hanging on for more. And Chris, we'll have to have you back for more podcasts.
Awesome. Anytime.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Cheers. Peace out.
Thanks for listening to the Revo podcast. If you liked today's episode, please subscribe, leave us a review, and you can always get more information, including show notes and the video episodes at evorevopodcast.com.